The insult? It was a busy Friday evening at Le Lumiere, a small but popular downtown restaurant known for its fine cuisine and elegant atmosphere. I had been invited to dine with a client, a crucial meeting for a potential business opportunity. Everything seemed perfect until the waiter arrived. He was young, overly confident, and carried himself with an arrogance that was immediately noticeable. I had ordered a simple dish, asking politely for modifications. The response I received, however, wasn't just a refusal. "You people don't usually know what you want," he sneered, his words sharp, dripping with derision. The insult wasn't subtle. It carried not only contempt, but a cruel reference to my skin color. I froze, stunned by the audacity, the sheer brazenness of someone speaking to a paying customer this way. The restaurant buzzed with conversation, the clinking of glasses and the soft hum of music. Yet the world seemed to pause around me, everyone fading into the background as the insult hung in the air. My initial reaction was fury, a wave of anger and embarrassment. I wanted to snap, to yell, to demand respect. But as I looked around, I noticed the glances, some sympathetic, some indifferent, some amused. And in that moment, I realized that a reaction born of anger wouldn't give me control I needed. Instead, I took a deep breath. I smiled faintly, maintaining composure, and spoke calmly. "I'll wait," I said, signaling my client to continue. But inside, a fire had ignited, a determination that this would not go unanswered. After the dinner concluded, I left the restaurant quietly, but my mind raced. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words, the insult, the disrespect, they haunted me. I kept replaying the scene, imagining every possible way I could respond. Not with violence or revenge, but with action that would command respect. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to complain to management. I wasn't going to leave a scathing review. I was going to do something that would ensure the insult never had the power to touch me again. I started researching the restaurant's ownership. I discovered it was a small, family-run business. The opportunity wasn't large in scale, but it was enough to make a statement. I contacted a few financial advisors discreetly, exploring options I hadn't considered before. I wanted not just to respond. I wanted to transform the situation entirely. The next day, armed with planning, determination, and a sense of righteous purpose, I returned to the restaurant. The young waiter who had insulted me recognized me immediately, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Back again?" he mocked, leaning against the counter. I smiled, and for the first time, I felt complete control. "Yes," I said, voice calm. "And today, things will be different." What followed was swift, precise, and entirely unexpected. I presented a proposal to the owners, highlighting a plan that would improve operations, increase revenue, and modernize their brand. I had arranged for partial financing and had prepared a detailed presentation. The owners, initially skeptical, were quickly convinced by the clarity, vision, and practicality of the proposal. By the end of the meeting, the agreement was in place. The ownership of the restaurant would transition in phases, with me taking a lead role in management and operations. The young waiter, who had insulted me just a day earlier, stood frozen. For the first time, the power dynamic had shifted entirely. That night, I returned to the restaurant as the new manager overseeing operations. Staff and patrons noticed the change immediately. The restaurant atmosphere shifted. Professionalism replaced arrogance. Attentiveness replaced dismissiveness. The young waiter approached, trying to mask his discomfort. I didn't expect this," he stammered. I smiled politely. "Expectations change when reality shifts," I said. And in that moment, the insult that had once wounded me became irrelevant. I had transformed the scenario entirely, not through rage or confrontation, but through strategy, vision, and action. Word spread quickly. Regular patrons noticed the transformation. Competitors took note of the new leadership style. Even employees who had doubted my abilities acknowledged the shift. The restaurant, once just a place to eat, had become a symbol, proof that control, patience, and decisive action could overturn injustice without stooping to it. But as I stood at the front of the restaurant, watching the staff adjust under my guidance, I realized this was only the beginning. The young waiter's behavior was just one small example of a broader problem. Entitlement, arrogance, and prejudice still existed, waiting for opportunities to manifest. And I knew this wouldn't be the last time I'd face such challenges. The restaurant, now under my oversight, began to grow rapidly. New client arrived, intrigued by the professionalism and efficiency of the staff. My vision for innovation, customer experience, and inclusivity began to take shape. But the true challenge was not external. It was internal. Could I transform people's hearts and minds while maintaining authority? Could I ensure respect and equality without fostering fear? These questions weighed heavily, but they also fueled my drive. Because this was about more than a single insult. This was about creating a space where dignity, respect, and fairness weren't optional. They were mandatory. That night, as the restaurant closed, I stood by the entrance, reflecting. I thought about the moment of insult, the shock, and the humiliation I had felt, and I smiled, not from satisfaction, not from revenge, but from a sense of empowerment. I had turned a single act of disrespect into a catalyst for transformation, and in doing so, I had rewritten the narrative entirely. The young waiter, now silent, had witnessed the power of strategic action over impulsive reaction. The restaurant, once a place of casual indifference, had become a testament to what could be achieved when resolve, intelligence, and courage intersect. And yet, as I looked out at the city beyond the restaurant's glass doors, I realized the story was far from over. Greater challenges awaited, more prejudice, more obstacles, and more opportunities to prove that dignity and vision could triumph over ignorance and arrogance. The seed had been planted, but the tree had yet to grow. The restaurant was only the beginning, a small battleground in a much larger war for respect, influence, and change. And I knew with certainty that the next chapter would be even more intense, more challenging, and more transformative. The transformation begins. The morning after assuming leadership, I walked to the restaurant early, before the staff arrived, absorbing the atmosphere and envisioned the changes that needed to take place. Every table, every station, every workflow became a point of analysis. I had no intention of letting arrogance or prejudice define this space any longer. I began with the staff. The young waiter who had insulted me was polite, but I could sense lingering resentment and confusion. I didn't confront him with anger. Instead, I challenged him. "You have potential," I told him calmly. "But potential without discipline and respect is wasted. I'm giving you a chance to prove you're more than your mistakes." He looked at me, unsure, but curiosity replaced arrogance. That tiny spark of accountability was a first step toward transformation. Over the next week, I observed every interaction in the restaurant. I noted patterns of behavior. Employees who slouched, who ignored guests, who whispered insults to each other. Some of the older staff resisted change, while younger employees seemed to thrive under guidance. I realized that transformation required both vision and structure. Rules alone wouldn't suffice. I needed to instill pride and ownership. I implemented small but significant changes, a training program emphasizing respect, customer service, and teamwork, weekly meetings to address grievances and discuss improvements, and incentives for employees who exemplified professionalism. I introduced mentorship roles for experienced staff to guide newer employees. Slowly, the culture began to shift. The young waiter, initially skeptical, started to respond. I assigned him to train a group of new hires. At first, he struggled. Old habits die hard. But with patient guidance and the knowledge that his growth mattered, he began to take pride in his work. I noticed subtle changes. His tone became respectful, his posture confident but not arrogant, and the laughter that once carried disdain was replaced by genuine engagement. It was not instantaneous, but it was visible, and this was only the beginning. Meanwhile, the clients noticed. A regular diner, who had often complained about inattentive service, remarked on the improvement. "There's a new energy here," she said, smiling. "It feels different, professional, yet warm. I can't explain it." Her words confirmed what I had hoped. Transformation at the core level of the staff rippled outward. The restaurant's reputation began to shift. The culture of disrespect, even if subtle, was being replaced by one of accountability and pride. Challenges persisted. Some employees resisted, complaining that the rules were too strict or that I was too controlling. Others tested boundaries, waiting to see if the new leadership was a bluff. I remained firm, balancing empathy with authority. I had learned long ago that consistency was the most potent tool for change. I also faced external challenges. A rival restaurant owner noticed a sudden improvement and tried to poach key staff. Competitors questioned whether our transformation was sustainable or just a temporary fix. These pressures threatened to undermine the progress, but I treated them as tests, opportunities to strengthen systems, reinforce culture, and demonstrate resilience. By the third month, the results were undeniable. Employee morale improved. Mistakes decreased. Customer satisfaction surged. Even the initially skeptical waiter was now a model employee, mentoring newcomers, leading by example, and earning respect from colleagues and patrons alike. One evening, a group of regulars gathered near the bar and whispered among themselves, noting the change in atmosphere. When the waiter approached with their order, they paused, surprised by professionalism. He smiled confidently, delivered their meals flawlessly, and left without a hint of the arrogance that once defined him. The entire group went silent for a moment, astonished. Change, they realized, was real, tangible, and undeniable. As the restaurant stabilized under the new management, I began planning for further growth. I wanted to expand beyond correcting behavior, to create a culture so strong that it could withstand challenges, inspire others, and serve as a model for excellence in service. I introduced structured feedback systems, recognizing not just mistakes but achievements. I invested in staff development, teaching financial literacy, communication skills, and leadership principles. I wanted every employee to feel empowered, valued, and capable of exceeding expectations. The young waiter, once the source of my frustration, emerged as a symbol of the transformation. Patrons who had dined during his arrogant days were often shocked when they returned, witnessing his complete evolution. He had become an advocate for change, mentoring others and demonstrating that growth was possible when guided with patience and intention. Yet, as proud as I was of the progress, I knew this was only one stage. Culture shifts could be fragile. Success could breed complacency, and even one lapse in leadership could unravel months of work. I remained vigilant, aware that the next challenge would test not just a restaurant, but the resilience and integrity of everyone involved. Then, a new opportunity arose, a chance to expand the restaurant's model to another location, doubling our reach and influence. But expansion brought risks, logistical complexities, new staff, and the possibility of repeating the old mistakes on a larger scale. It was a pivotal moment. I called the team together. "We've come far, but our work isn't done," I said. "Expansion will test everything we've built. Our culture, our discipline, our commitment to respect and excellence. If we succeed, we'll create something extraordinary. If we fail, it's not just the restaurant at stake. It's the principles we've fought to uphold." They listened, attentive, their expressions a mix of excitement and determination. Together, we began planning the next chapter, cautiously, strategically, but with unwavering ambition. The restaurant had been transformed, but the journey was far from over. The insult that once ignited a fire within me had sparked a broader mission, proving that respect, vision, and leadership could triumph over arrogance and prejudice. And as I stood in the office, watching the staff work seamlessly together, I realized that the story of transformation had only just begun. The next steps would demand creativity, courage, and unwavering determination, but I was ready. The expansion and the unexpected challenge. The morning air was crisp as we gathered outside the restaurant, ready to visit the site of our planned expansion. The news of the transformation had spread far beyond our original location. Patrons, critics, and even rival restaurants had taken notice. But expansion was not just an opportunity. It was a test of whether the culture we had painstakingly built could endure in a new environment. The team was nervous but determined. I could sense their anticipation, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Expansion wasn't just about replicating a menu or physical space. It was about embedding respect, professionalism, and excellence into every interaction, every corner, and every person who walked through the doors. We opened a second location with high hopes, carefully selecting staff and personally mentoring each hire. The young waiter who had once insulted me played a crucial role, training new employees and modeling behavior that embodied patience, humility, and professionalism. He had become not just an employee, but a symbol of change and a living example of what could be achieved with guidance and accountability. The first week was intense. Systems we had perfected in the original restaurant encountered new variables, unfamiliar clientele, unpredictable staff dynamics, and logistical challenges we hadn't fully anticipated. Mistakes were made, small errors that tested the team's resilience and adaptability. But the foundation of respect and training allowed us to recover quickly. One evening, midway through service, a group of influential food critics arrived unexpectedly. They were known for their scathing reviews, capable of making or breaking reputations overnight. The staff felt the pressure immediately, tension rippling to the dining room like an electric current. I stood at the edge of the floor, observing silently. The young waiter approached me, anxiety etched across his face. What if we fail? What if they see a mistake and dismiss everything? I placed a hand on his shoulder. They will see what we built, not what we feared. I said, excellence isn't about perfection. It's about intent, consistency, and heart. Trust yourself and trust the team. As the night progressed, everything seemed to align. Service flowed smoothly. Plates were delivered with precision, and the diners engaged with warmth and attentiveness. The critics noticed, making notes and observing the staff discreetly. And then, the moment of truth came. A minor issue arose at one table, a miscommunication about a dish. The staff handled it flawlessly. Apologies were sincere, corrections were immediate, and the situation was turned into an opportunity to impress. The critics watched, nodding subtly, their expressions shifting from scrutiny to intrigue. By the end of the night, whispers spread. The new location wasn't just functional, it was exceptional. Staff had maintained professionalism under pressure, and the culture of respect and accountability we had cultivated was evident in every interaction. But the successive expansion brought unforeseen challenges. A rival restaurant chain, feeling threatened by our rapid growth, launched a campaign to tarnish our reputation. False claims of poor hygiene, subpar ingredients, and unfair labor practices began to circulate on social media. The team panicked at first. Comments and reviews poured in, some angry, some doubtful. Yet, we had prepared for this. I organized an emergency meeting and addressed the team. We built this on integrity and excellence. We don't react with panic. We respond with truth, transparency, and action. Every challenge is a chance to reinforce what we stand for. We implemented immediate measures, live social media updates showcasing our operations, open kitchen events to invite customers to see our standards firsthand, and staff-led videos emphasizing professionalism and dedication. Within days, the narrative began to shift. Patrons, seeing the authenticity, rallied behind us. Critics and neutral observers began reporting favorably. During this period, the young waiter emerged as a leader. He spoke at events, mentored new hires across both locations, and represented the restaurant in community outreach programs. His growth had become a testament not only to his personal journey, but also to the transformative power of guidance, respect, and opportunity. Yet even as the business thrived, I knew the real impact extended beyond profits and accolades. The restaurant had become a microcosm of a larger principle, that dignity, respect, and intentional leadership could transform environments, communities, and lives. One afternoon, while reviewing the financials and customer feedback, I received a message from a philanthropic organization. They wanted to collaborate with us, using the restaurant as a model to train young adults from underserved communities in hospitality, leadership, and service excellence. This was an opportunity far greater than expansion or profit. It was a chance to impact lives, extend our influence, and demonstrate that transformation could ripple outward beyond our walls. I called the team together. This is bigger than any restaurant, any profit, any review. I said, we have the chance to change lives, to show the world that respect, courage, and opportunity can create something truly extraordinary. Are we ready to take it? They nodded, faces glowing with determination, pride, and excitement. But as plans for the philanthropic program began, a new challenge emerged. A seasoned manager, hired to oversee operations at the second location, resisted the new culture, attempting to assert control through intimidation and old habits. This threat to our values created tension among staff and risked undermining everything we had built. I realized that the true test of leadership wasn't just external challenges. It was internal. Could we maintain integrity, culture, and purpose in the face of resistance from within? Could we protect what we had created while continuing to grow and inspire others? The answer, I knew, would define the next chapter, one where the stakes were higher than ever, and the opportunity to leave a lasting legacy would be tested like never before. As I stood in the bustling dining room that evening, watching staff seamlessly serve patrons, I felt a mix of pride and anticipation. We had grown, faced adversity, and begun to impact lives beyond our initial vision. Yet, the story was far from over. Greater challenges, deeper transformations, and a chance to create something truly lasting awaited. The insult that had once sparked this journey had evolved into a mission far larger than a single restaurant, a single individual, or a single moment of anger. And I knew the next chapter would demand every ounce of courage, wisdom, and vision we possessed. The legacy of respect. The rain fell softly against the wide glass windows as I stood in the middle of the dining room, watching reflections shimmer across the polished floor. The restaurant was quiet, the kind of calm that follows a storm. We had grown from a single dining room filled with tension and arrogance into a brand recognized for its integrity, warmth, and relentless pursuit of excellence. But success, I had learned, never comes without a price. Our philanthropic partnership had begun in full swing. Every week, groups of young men and women from underprivileged neighborhoods walked through our doors, eager yet uncertain. They were shy at first, their voices soft, their eyes cautious. Many had been told they would never amount to anything, words that I knew all too well. I gathered them together one morning before training. "You may not believe it yet," I said, looking around the room, "but you are capable of greatness. What people say about you doesn't define who you are. What you choose to do every day, that's what defines you." They listened intently, some nodding, some holding back tears. I saw myself in them. The same doubt, the same hunger, the same quiet hope. The restaurant had become more than a business. It was a living example of redemption and transformation. But as our reach expanded, so did the weight of leadership. The new manager, the one who had resisted our culture from the start, began to cause fractures. He was experienced, skilled in operations, but arrogant. He believed efficiency mattered more than empathy, control more than collaboration. Slowly, the air in the second location began to change. Staff who once thrived under mutual respect grew quiet. Whispers replaced laughter. Mistakes were met with ridicule instead of correction. One night, after closing, I visited the location unannounced. I found a young trainee, one of the students from our community program, wiping tears from his eyes near the back door. "What happened?" I asked gently. He hesitated, then whispered, "Mr. Grant yelled at me, said I was too slow, said people like me will never handle fine dining." The words hit me like a stone. They were echoes of my past. The same venom I had once endured now poisoned the very culture we built. I confronted Grant the next morning. He was composed, leaning casually against the counter, arms folded. "Do you know what you said to that boy last night?" I asked. "I told him the truth," he replied, his voice cool. "Not everyone's cut out for this. We can't run a charity here." I stepped closer, my voice steady but sharp. "This restaurant is a charity, a mission, a legacy, a chance for people to see what's possible when they're treated with respect. You don't get to decide who's worthy." He scoffed. "You've gotten soft. This place runs on discipline, not dreams." I held his gaze. "No, it runs on dignity. Discipline without compassion destroys people. And I won't let that happen here." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then I added quietly, "You're dismissed." His eyes widened. "You're firing me?" "I'm protecting everything we built," I said. Word of the confrontation spread quickly. Some staff worried it would destabilize the restaurant, but instead, it reignited something deeper: trust. The trainees returned with renewed enthusiasm, and the senior employees, inspired by the decision, rallied around our core values once again. Still, part of me feared how fragile progress could be. Culture, I realized, wasn't a monument. It was a garden. It required constant care, patience, and protection from weeds that threatened to overtake it. Months passed. The philanthropic program grew beyond anything we imagined. Graduates of our training were being hired across the city. some in prestigious hotels, others in their own small businesses. And the young waiter, once a symbol of arrogance, now stood beside me as co-director of the program. One afternoon, after a long meeting, he turned to me and said, "You know, if you had given me a second chance, I would have kept being that person, angry, defensive, lost." I smiled. We all needed someone to give us a chance. Now it's our turn to do the same. He nodded. "Funny, isn't it? You built this place because of one person's cruelty, and now it's saving people from becoming like him." I paused, realizing the truth in his words. Pain, when transformed, could become power. The insult that once wounded me had become the seed of something far greater, a legacy of empathy and strength. Then one night, something unexpected happened. The restaurant was full, a mix of loyal customers, new patrons, and even a few of the trainees' families. The energy was warm, electric. In the middle of service, the hostess approached me nervously. "There's someone here asking for you," she said softly. When I turned, I froze. Standing at the entrance, older, heavier, and visibly uncomfortable, was a man who had insulted my skin color years ago, the one who had mocked me, humiliated me, and ignited everything that followed. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. The noise of the restaurant faded into a hum. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and uncertain. "I didn't expect to find you here," he said. "People change." I replied evenly. "Or at least they can." He looked down, his hands fidgeting. "I heard what you've done, this place, these programs. I wanted to see it for myself." His tone carried a strange mix of pride and regret. He hesitated, then added, "I was wrong. About you, about everything." I studied him, the man who once made me feel so small. There was no anger left, only clarity. "You weren't wrong about me," I said quietly. "You were wrong about what people are capable of." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Can I stay for dinner?" "Of course," I said. "Everyone deserves a second chance." As he took a seat, the young waiter approached his table, unaware of their history, and treated him with the same respect and professionalism he had once been denied. Watching that exchange, I felt something shift inside me. The circle was complete. The insult that began as an open wound had become the foundation of a movement. Through pain, I had found purpose. Through humiliation, I had discovered leadership. Through forgiveness, I had found peace. But as the night went on and laughter filled the room, a new thought surfaced, a question I couldn't ignore. If one restaurant could change so many lives, what could we do next? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Expansion again, but this time not just in business, in education, mentorship, perhaps even a foundation that reached beyond borders. The legacy of respect wasn't complete. It was only beginning to take shape. That night, as I locked the doors and looked out at the quiet street, I whispered to myself, "Let them insult me, doubt me, hate me, because every time they do, I'll build something greater than their fear." And with that, I walked into the rain, ready for whatever came next, to be continued